Welcome to my channel. My name is Alex and I travel full-time with my cat and my FJ Cruiser. Sometimes we take the travel trailer with us, other times all we've got is our overlanding setup. Last week I shared the process of getting Shadow ready for Mexico and getting his kitty passport, and then traveling from California to Arizona to get my own passport, cross the border, and then finally start setting up in Mexico, which is where we'll pick up this week. I know, you've seen my mom and dad in the introduction and now you're wondering, oh my god, Alex, what do you have up your sleeve? You did not mention your parents last week, and that is true, and I will explain in due time. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let us continue with the setting up process in Mexico for the very first time. So once I got the trailer in and straight, I got Shadow out of the truck. Usually I get him out as quickly as possible. He's fine being inside, even if I have to straighten the trailer after this or back up to level it. I then got my steps out so that I could get in and out safely. After that, I put my mat down as soon as possible because this is by the beach and that means sand. The parking spot was wide but not very long, so the next thing I did was unhitch my truck and park it next to the RV. I did spend some time fighting with the rusted electricity pedestal, but I didn't film that, so once I got that settled, I tried to get my filtration system on directly to the faucet, but it didn't work. So I had to sacrifice one of my hoses that was going to come into direct contact with potentially contaminated water. I then flushed the filter. There was nothing in the instructions that said I should do that, but usually that's in every instruction I've ever had for filters. I then attached the second hose to my filtration system and started the process of bleaching the tanks using the same syringe that I used last week to flush my water filtration system. It doesn't look like it, but it was actually really hot that day, so my phone overheated and shut off. By the time I got it working again, I was in the process of removing the hitch from my truck. I removed it for two main reasons: potential rust and potential theft. Before coming to Mexico, I had also invested in a solar generator, so I got that and I'm really glad that I brought it with me. We have had blackouts since I moved to Mexico, so I'm really glad I brought my solar generator with me, but that's a story for another day. For now, this is my portable picnic table, and I will leave a link to that below because a bunch of people have asked. Because my tank was bleached, I do have to wait a little bit for it to disinfect the water. It doesn't just happen immediately. I think it's like half an hour to a couple of hours or something of that sort. Thankfully, I had my Berkey water filter inside, so I was just able to use that and wash my hands so that I could get started on cleaning up inside. While I was cleaning up, I noticed that Shadow was in some kind of distress, so I went to see what was going on, and I noticed that his play area had completely caved in, probably from some of the dirt roads I had to take the RV down and the weight of the litter box that was still inside at that time. I tried to lift that thing up, but I could not. But what I did learn was that it wasn't going anywhere anyway, so I decided, you know what, I'm not going to fight with this. So I cleaned it up, put the litter box inside, and went outside to enjoy the view. I'm from Jamaica, so it's really hard to impress me with beaches. I grew up with turquoise blue waters, pristine white sand. This is not that, but it is beautiful in its own right, and I really found it interesting how far the tide goes out, so you can walk along places that were covered in water earlier. In fact, when it goes all the way out, you can actually go off-roading on what was hours before just water, which is how I got my FJ on the beach, and I will get into that in another video. I worked for 3 days, and then the night before I was supposed to pick my parents up from the airport in Mexicali, I broke out into full body hives. It was much worse than what I just showed you. However, it was so gross, I didn't even want to look at it, so I wasn't going to film it either. However, by morning, that was how nicely cleared up it was, so I was on my way to Mexicali. I did pass through that checkpoint I warned you about last week. The military waved me through this time, but the second time I wasn't so lucky. When I showed up at our Airbnb, I noticed that once again I was in the hood, and this is what happens when you try to travel cheaply. Every once in a while, you end up in a less than perfect environment. I was walking down the street and I was like, oh my god, that looks like a border wall, and it was. The Airbnb itself was nice and cute. It was a tiny home, but I couldn't figure out how to get the lights to work when I got there. So unfortunately, I didn't have any amazing footage to show you before we had our stuff all over the place inside. My parents shared the bed, and the sofa pulled out into a second bed, which is where I slept. And it also had a decent sized kitchen, which we didn't use anyways. We were only there for one night. And it had a nice bathroom. Around 9:30, my mom messaged me from Mexico City to find out if I had brought Shadow with me because we booked a pet-friendly Airbnb, but I had decided to leave Shadow in Rocky Point. And then around 1 something in the morning, she let me know that they had landed. Around 2 a.m. in the morning, I'm still waiting for my parents to show up. So I messaged my mom to figure out what's going on. And she says there's no cars for Uber, and the taxi service is claiming that they can't find the address for the Airbnb. That makes no sense because I found the address for the Airbnb as a foreigner coming all the way from Puerto Penasco, which is 4 hours away. So I had to make a difficult decision. The number one rule you're given for driving as a U.S. person in Mexico, and you're told this by Mexican locals, by U.S. expats, by U.S. tourists, do not drive at night. Get off the road before dark. Well, here I am at 2:36 a.m. trying to head to the airport in the city to find my parents. First thing that goes wrong, I make a wrong turn and end up down this dark, creepy dirt road when I'm supposed to be on the highway. But eventually I found my way and made it to the airport. Obviously, this was not the ideal start to seeing my parents for the first time in a year. My mom was upset, and understandably so. They had paid the company that was approved by the airport to transport them, and the company was helping all the Mexicans, and they were the only U.S. persons there, and they were not helped. My dad speaks a little bit of Spanish and was trying to communicate with them, and it didn't lead to anything. To make matters worse, they took the money that was paid because you have to pay up front, but then would not refund them even though they claimed they couldn't find where my parents were supposed to go, and even though obviously I ended up having to come to get them. So yes, my mom was really, really mad. So the other reason you're not supposed to drive at night as a U.S. person is the corruption of local police officers. The bright lights that you're seeing behind me in this video is a cop car riding my ass with his high beams on, trying to intimidate me into making a mistake, which is very easy in Mexico because the signs are not reflective the way they are in America. So you can just blow right past a stop sign at night, which is yet another reason you're not supposed to drive after dark in Mexico. We all just stayed calm in the car. We were discussing the situation because it was unfair and it was very obvious what the police officer was trying to do. But eventually he realized that his tactics were not going to work. It was just very eerie how the light just starts to disappear. And when I checked my rearview mirror, he just very creepily backed into an alleyway and disappeared into the darkness. We made it to the Airbnb with no further incidents except that we had an uninvited house guest. Oh my. The following morning, we packed our things and started the drive back to Rocky Point, but it was not the end of misadventure. We ran into the Federeli at a checkpoint between Baja California and Sonora, and they tore the entire FJ Cruiser apart. I mean, tapping panels for drugs, going through all our suitcases, getting down to underwear and cash, and reading paperwork out of my truck. It was bizarre. And searching multiple vehicles and then getting into my personal things with no gloves. We were not happy campers. But next week, we'll get into the fun things that happen in Mexico and why in the end it was all worth it. Yes, I'll also explain why my mom's on the side of the road yelling for help. That and more next week. See you on Friday. Bye.